HOA vandalizes father's truck, gets immediate justice, posted by Deleted. This happened a few years back. Our HOA has always been known to be sneaky and to flat out give false accusations on homeowners, especially in this day with security cameras, and we can pretty easily spot out who the investigators are. Most recently, a homeowner was told that she was supposed to get approval before she started reshingling her roof. The thing is, her roof hasn't been reshingled in 10 years, and she had no plans to do it. Things like that. Call it just a mistake, call it malicious. Well, a few years ago, we had our time to shine. It was a simple morning. I was still temporarily living with my father at the time. Well, one morning we decided to go out to get groceries when we found that his pickup truck had been smashed into. Nothing was taken, it was just smashed into. In fact, I still have pictures from the day just before the cops arrived. Cops arrived, they do some investigating, and found that a rock inside the truck was from a house down the street. Unfortunately, they couldn't get them to admit to the crime, nor could they prove it was even them. Understandable, criminals will grab things that they find, but it was suspicious. The rock, I should say, was a special kind of rock that no one else in the neighborhood had, some round polished type, very unique. After this incident, I installed a security camera on his house. Well, not 2 days later, we got an HOA violation for a vehicle eyesore that needs to be removed. Just 2 days later. I'm confused how such a letter could have been written up so fast, but I started to suspect foul play. One day, we were home and had a knock at the door. The HOA actually called a code inspection officer. The week hadn't even been over yet, so the parts to fix the truck weren't delivered yet. Now, we weren't paying expedited shipping for damages that we didn't cause, and the truck was so old, insurance would probably just total it. The truck is sentimental to him, so he was not going to get rid of it. I mean, it still ran great. Code inspection tells my father that vehicles which do not run need to be removed. They both stop talking and take a second, and both almost say at the same time, "Don't I know you?" Turns out the code inspection officer went to the same church as my father, and they knew each other. This isn't the malicious compliance yet. We are only just beginning. The officer tells my father if he can show that the truck starts, he's going to write it up as being in code. My father starts the truck just fine as the engine isn't damaged. He tells him to go on with his day and to have a good one. At this point, we are furious because we are starting to suspect that the HOA may have did this, as there's no way they could have possibly known so fast. Unfortunately, our turn of the street had no neighbors with security cameras until I installed one on our house, so it caught nothing specific to our incident. Down the street, these people supposedly broke into a car as well, but the camera on their house was unable to see anything. Dang. Here's where the fun begins. Fast forward a couple of months, after nothing happened, I decided to install a new dash cam in my car. I found a good one that uses very little power off the battery, and it can activate if there's any bumps to the car, even if the car's off. It just needs to be wired straight to the battery for this. It's a thinkware. A few days later, we got a violation notice for our mailbox being crooked. It wasn't crooked much, but I do remember it recently having an angle. Odd. I mean, I could just fix it, but my car was aiming straight at the mailbox. I'm thinking, no, this could not be possible. It only records if there's a bump. I take out the memory card, and apparently I either didn't configure it correctly, but it was recording the whole time. It never went into sleep mode. I watched as the investigator walks up to the mailbox and pushes it crooked, and then writes down on his tablet his findings and takes a picture for his records. I am appalled at what I see. I have the proof that I needed. Now, for the malicious compliance. They wanted us to come to the board meeting and present what is going on at our address. We haven't told them yet that we had the pictures, but to summarize real fast how our HOA works, the board hires an outside company to do the grunt work. Let's call it Bentry Management. We go to the meeting and we sit down. Bentry Management has the one in control of our account, and I swear to you, she looked like a Karen, so the name fits for her. As time goes by in the meeting, we get to discuss what's happening at our house. We present the timelines and tell them about the truck being smashed, and just 2 days later, we get a letter. We ask what dates the investigator was out for that time. Karen refuses to answer it. She argues ignorantly that we should keep better care of our stuff, as if it was our fault. Then comes the mailbox incident. We tell her that we have reasons to believe that the investigator is the one causing all the damages to our property and is harassing us. Karen denies this and says that that's impossible and that she knows him personally. "Oh, is that so?" I ask. She says, "Yes, why?" I then pull out my laptop out of my book bag that I had been hiding, open it up to the video file already loaded, and show it to the entire board. "Enter Exhibit A," I said out loud and played the video. Karen's face is bright red. She says that that's not her investigator. I then also pulled out the letter about the mailbox, which was complete with date. It matches the cooked-on timestamp on the video. She still tries to claim it's not them. No, it's a coincidence. I'm sorry, but you have a vandal and it's not us. It's not? I let the video play, knowing that she's falling into a pit hard right now. As the man walks toward my car, you can see plain as day, see Bentry Management on his shirt. She's no longer red now. She's white as a ghost. The board looks over at her and asks what she has to say about this. Karen is silent and has nothing except a few noises, which I assume was her brain trying to comprehend what just happened. I then proceed to bring up a previous case, which I happened to remember before we left for the meeting, where we had a grass violation beside our house. Now, this area that they were claiming was actually not visible from the sidewalk due to the house's shape. I asked point blank, has at any time, your investigators walked on our property illegally trespassing? Knowing as, per their rules, they aren't allowed to do that. Karen is visibly shaking now and mutters out, No, of course not, with her head down, unable to maintain eye contact with me. She probably feels that I have more evidence, but unfortunately I didn't. So I ask again. She asks, why? Our neighbor, who are lawyers literally next door to us where the side of this wall was, stands up and says, actually, that's not true. I have witnessed one of your investigators go between our houses and poke around the trash bins. Bingo! I didn't even realize she had this information. I couldn't have asked for better timing. Karen at this point just starts arguing with our neighbors about no proof. The board proceeds to apologize for the incident, and they were going to discuss what is going to happen in the future about this. At that point, the meeting is over. A month passes, and we get a letter that a new person will be in charge for Bentry Management and new investigators. She was fired that night. Since she was fired, my father tells me that we only get the occasional blip of errors, but they correct it immediately, and they don't bother us really anymore. Terrible HOA story time. Wonder how you'd handle this. HOA tried to make me remove my rainwater cistern, posted by the home machinist. After buying my first house, one thing that I really wanted was a nice green lawn. I am also of the opinion that using fresh water for lawn irrigation is a waste of such a limited resource. So I set out to build an underground rainwater cistern to capture rainwater to irrigate my lawn. Operating on some assumptions that may or may not have been correct, I did not get approval before doing so. The theory being that an underground change that results in no visible change to the exterior of the property was beyond the scope of architectural controls. I also checked my local building regulations, and I found that there weren't any permits required for the installation of the cistern, only for associated pumps and underground plumbing later. So I built the cistern in a wooded area to the rear of the property that isn't visible from the street. When I am just about finished with it, I get a cease and desist letter from the HOA stating that they were doing a drive-through inspection and saw me building something large out of concrete and black pipe and didn't have approval for any projects on my property. The letter stated that I needed to submit an application for approval of the cistern. They used that word specifically, not sure how they even knew what it was when they couldn't see it, before I continued working on it. The management company representative displayed an utter lack of knowledge in just about every aspect of our dealings, including that it's highly unlikely that the town would allow a rainwater cistern in a residential yard. In fact, state law specifically prohibits any ordinance or regulation that would prohibit the installation and use of rainwater cisterns for flushing toilets and outdoor irrigation. They said a building permit is required for any project that includes concrete, as the town is very finicky about the use of concrete. This is also blatantly false. Not only did I have to get a town representative to state in writing that I did not need a building permit to install the cistern, but their website also states specifically that concrete patios, fences with posts set in concrete, and buildings less than 12 feet in any dimension, presumably with concrete foundations, do not require building permits. Approval is needed before any exterior changes are made to the property. There are plenty of written and unwritten rules allowing changes to be made without approval. Examples include like building raised flower beds, installing backup generators, or removing trees less than 6 inches in diameter. Annoyed, I just submitted an application thinking it was just someone trying to check a box. This was a mistake. They denied the application, stating that there were no architectural standards for rainwater cisterns, so they wouldn't approve it. So I appealed the decision to the board, and they set a hearing for the next board meeting. I then spent a few hours preparing for this appeal. So my argument includes things like, well, state law stating that it is the policy of the state that the use of rainwater cisterns for flushing toilets and outdoor irrigation is critical for meeting the future water supply needs of the state. State Supreme Court decision that states that real covenants may not offend articulated matters of public policy. And our covenants and restrictions make a distinction between on, under, and over lots, with architectural restrictions applying to structures placed on lots, not under lots. Simulations showing just tens of thousands of gallons of runoff that would be captured and not drained onto neighboring properties anymore. Now, the town website is actively encouraging the use of rainwater cisterns to improve water quality and decrease strain on the water supply. I mean, there's even photos of the site on the cistern showing that even standing right next to it and looking straight at it, you can't see it. None of this even mattered. The day of the hearing, the management company accidentally sends my confidential application with personal information I specifically opted out of sharing in the neighborhood directory to the entire neighborhood. After that happened, I asked a lawyer to send an email to the management company and the board on my behalf and to attend the hearing as they appeared to be acting in bad faith. The association immediately canceled the hearing since their lawyer was not available to attend. After a few weeks, they set a new hearing date for a few months out. After waiting those few months, a few days before, they canceled a second hearing as well, suddenly interested in finding a mutual agreement. They say that I need to come to an agreement about screening the cistern and submit an application for the removal of trees. The cistern is underground. You can't see it. There is nothing to screen. They had pictures of the completed site. How they thought something had to be screened is beyond me. Well, I also specifically placed it in a spot that I would not have to remove any trees. So, not a single tree was removed. My attorney replied to their attorney within an hour of that response. It took them another 8 weeks to respond, stating that the association considers the matter resolved. They wouldn't approve it, but they were no longer attempting to make me remove it. The icing on the cake, They spent somewhere between $5 and $9 grand on their attorney for this and raised dues on the entire neighborhood, citing skyrocketing legal fees associated with a member's architectural review appeal. I told them that I was going to inspect the books and records of the association, as is my right according to the bylaws. The books, records, and papers of the association shall be subject to inspection by any member during all reasonable hours. They refused the inspection, stating that I had to schedule ahead of time with the management company, who was not available for at least a month, and pursuant to state law, the management company would babysit me and charge me $100 an hour during the inspection. State law does allow them to charge reasonable cost associated with preparing documents for the inspection. Does $100 an hour after documents are prepared for inspection sound like it's allowed by law? Do you agree with this commenter's theory? Strongly suspect that they canceled the first hearing because they told their lawyer about it, and at the last minute, and the lawyer, presumably knowing something about state law regarding underground cisterns, said, "You did what?" and needed time to see if there was any way to get them out of it. Then they canceled the second hearing because the lawyer told them that they were out of luck. This HOA is just doing shady stuff, trying to put it over OP, thinking that he won't even recognize, like he's a dummy or something. No way. How would you handle this? This story involves an HOA with a twist. Wonder what it'll be. I reported my annoying neighbor until he moved by I Nom Nom Awesome. I just want peace and quiet and to be left alone. I'm in my late 20s and I live alone, and I really hate kids. My neighborhood is a group of separate houses without yards that are spaced close to each other. I've lived here for 5 years by myself, and it's perfect. Everything I've ever wanted. No yards to take care of, and no kids around making noise. The houses share a large T-shaped cement driveway, and none of us have ever interacted with each other. We come and go, we stay quiet, and we mind our own business. There's a small park down the street with grass for those who want it, literally a 30-second walk away. About a year ago, a guy with a lot of little kids moved into my neighborhood. As always, I just drove past him like anyone else and closed my garage, never spoke to him, no problem. Over time, he started making himself at home. He would park his large truck in the motor court, which has a sign saying that it's illegal because it's a fire lane, and it would block his neighbor's garage across from him. He would set up lawn chairs in front of his neighbor's garage and have the little kids out there running and screaming right in front of people's houses and garages, so we would have to listen to it and then try not to run over the children as we back our cars out of the garages. He would rev his motorcycle at 8 a.m. on a Saturday and wake up the neighborhood. When his kids would be blocking the driveway, they'd take their sweet time moving. Because of this, I did one simple thing. When I would come home every day and drive past or around them, I wouldn't wave back when he waved at me. Oh, how that hurt his pride. He should have left it at that, but no, he had to press the issue. So, he started waving more and then shouting at me as I drove past, and then telling his kids to stop and stand and wave at me as I always drove past, and I ignored them all. Until eventually, he didn't like how I drove around his kids that were in the way, even though I always drive at a safe and slow speed there, so he tried to confront me. He shouted at my car and then came to my garage as I was already getting out of the car and had the garage closing, so it closed right in his face without me ever looking at him. He didn't like that at all, so he immediately walked to my front door, saw that I had a doorbell camera, and turned around and walked away. A couple of days later, coming home, he was crossing the driveway as I arrived, and because he had told the kids to stop and wave at me, the jerk stopped in the middle, so he stood in my way to block my car while trying to get the kid to move, and so I honked for 3 seconds right in his face until he moved. That was our last interaction, and I decided that he's annoyed me enough. I live in an HOA. I don't actually care about any of the rules, but I decided to use them all to report him endlessly for every violation that I knew of, using my dash cam on my car for screenshots with evidence. His parking in the motor court stopped after they gave him a ticket. He had to throw out the child's playhouse that he had set up next to his garage, and I kept reporting him for having an open garage door. that I don't actually care about, in order to get him to have to stop hanging out in the motor court and, oh, I don't know, use his brain and take the kids down the street to the park. It only took 4 months of reporting him repeatedly, and he just moved out. This commenter here has it down pat with the neighbors. I lived next to my neighbor for 8 years. I don't even know his name. We're cool though. We did a head nod about 6 months ago. Great guy. When you have good neighbors, it makes you so thankful that you don't have the bad ones. Oh my goodness. What do you think? HOA secrets exposed, tax evasion, fraud, and extortion. How I uncovered it. Find out how by clicking on the video on the screen. You don't want to miss this story, and I'll see you there.